Okay, so this is our last class until we pick up again after Labor Day. So we're on chapter 11, which is on page 250, and it's a long chapter, and it has a very important story about Yiftach and the judge Yiftach and what happens in his life. So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. It says, as I pointed out last time, I think, but I'll point it out again. You see a little asterisk between the number one and the Hebrew and the first Hebrew word that leads to a line and small print that says 1v, well, that is verse 1. Then it says Haftarat Chukat. It's the Haftarah for Chukat. So the portion Chukat in the book of Numbers has this as the Haftarah only because there's a section in the portion Chukat in which they encounter the Ammonites. And here, this is a war against the Ammonites. However, the entire chapter is not the Haftarah. It only goes up to a certain point, like until the victory. Okay, so let's, the context again, the Ammonites are in control over Israel, and the people of Israel are crying out to God. And verse 18 of the last chapter says, the princes of Gilead said to one another, "What man is he that will begin to fight against the children of Ammon? He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Okay. V'yiftach hagil adi, haya gibur chayil, v'hu ben isha zona, vayoled Gilad et Yiftach. So Yiftach the Gileadite was it says a mighty man of valor. So I guess that's as best a translation, Gibor Chayil, as opposed to what we sing traditionally every Friday night. Men sing to their wives, Eshet Chayil. So it's the same idea. So woman of valor, Eshet Chayil, Gibor Chayil. So Chayil here, usually a chayal is a soldier. So chayil, it's the same word, same root for it. So a valiant, it's kind of like what that comic strip that used to be on Sunday, the Prince Valiant, right? So it's a soldier that is not a mercenary, but a soldier for a higher cause. Okay, so a Gibor Chayil, kind of like a Hercules, kind of like that kind of figure, a valiant figure who is like standing for the values of the country in going to war. Okay, so Yiftach the Gileadite was such a man, a mighty man of valor, and he was a son of a prostitute. Gilad bore Yiftach. Okay. 2, Vateled Eshet Gilad lo banim. Vayigdalu b'nei ha'isha, vayigarshu et Yiftach. Vayomru lo tinchal b'veit avinu, ki ven isha acheret ata. And the wife of Gilad bore him sons. And the sons of the wife grew up and drove out Yiftach, saying to him, "You will not inherit from our father's house, because you are the son of another woman." Now, they didn't call him a son of a prostitute, they called him a son of another woman. So kind of nicer way to say it, but still drove him out of the house. You're not our full blood brother. You're not going to inherit from our father. So get out of here. 3, Vayivrach Yiftach mipnei Echav, Vayeshev be'eretz Tov. Vayitlaktu el Yiftach anashim rekim vayetzu imo. So Yiftach fled from his brothers, and he settled. Now, I could translate this. Just a second, Marlene is coming in. Okay, so we just started chapter 11, Marlene. We're on page 250 in the book. We're on verse 3. Yiftach fled from his brothers, and now I could translate this, he settled in a good land. But the translation says, in the land of Tov. So in other words, Tov means good. But here, the editors, the translators are understanding that it's not a good land, but rather good with a small g as an adjective, but rather Tov is the name of the land, wherever that is. We'll look at the commentary soon. And empty fellows, I'm translating literally. It says here vain fellows. Empty fellows, like worthless, kind of like people men who don't know, they don't have a place to go, that kind of person, were gathered to Yiftach, and they went out with him. Like he gathered around himself this group of men, also people who like maybe homeless, are not attached any place. That's what it means. Vain fellows kind of gives the impression that they think highly of themselves. I'm not so sure from the context yet if that's an appropriate translation. Yes, Barry.
Isn't that whole first paragraph, that sentence structure, sort of very clunky? I mean, because it's saying, shouldn't it be that Gilead was a mighty man, that Gilead begot Jephthah, and Jephthah the Gilead was a mighty man, but he was the son of a harlot, and his brothers didn't like him. I mean, it's a confusing paragraph, isn't it?
The book of Judges is filled with.
Okay.
I've commented a lot about the structure, the grammar of the verses, and I don't know what that says. If I were a Bible scholar, perhaps I could focus some time on comparing the grammar and the editing of the book of Judges to other books.
Okay.
It certainly seems less smooth. I don't know why that is. Certainly it could have been written better. I don't know.
I mean, I had to read it a couple times to
Yeah,
realize it.
exactly. And the Old English doesn't help either. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, if you read it in Alter, Alter fixes it and makes it sound a little bit better. So anyway, let's look at the commentary here on these three sentences. So it's hard to pronounce his name in English, Jephthah. It's so better to say it in Hebrew, Yiftach. Yiftach. It appears as a place name in the book of Joshua, Yiftach chapter 15, and Yiftahel, or maybe it's Yiftachel in chapter 19. Mighty man of valor, the same quality was ascribed to Gideon in chapter 6, later to Kish, the father of Saul in 1 Samuel, and the Syrian general Naaman in 2 Kings. So interesting. In the Bible, the descriptor Gibor Chayil is reserved for these 4 men only. King David isn't called a Gibor Chayil. Moses isn't called a Gibor Chayil. It's Yiftach, Kish, the father of King Saul, Gideon, and the Syrian general, the non-Jew Naaman. Okay. A harlot. Tradition declares that she was a concubine and is called a harlot because she lived with her husband Gilead without betrothal and marriage contract. So this is Kimchi, medieval commentator, based on rabbinic tradition. So, if you're going to have a hero in the Bible, well, better whitewash his background to make it sound a little bit better. So it wasn't just a prostitute. Okay, we'll just say never formally married her. She was. So there wasn't anything untoward about it because men could have more than one wife. It's just that he didn't make it legal. She was certainly worthy. They were both worthy. They were both allowed, according to Jewish law, to be together. So there's no affair, there's no adultery or anything like that. So that's how the rabbis fix it. According to the Targum, the Aramaic translation, she was an innkeeper like Rachav. So here, that's a funny thing because so we use the Eitz Chaim in the pews. We used to use the Hertz, the blue Chumash. So the Haftarah for the portion Shlach Lecha in Numbers is taken from Joshua and the story of Joshua sending the two spies into the city of Jericho. And a prostitute named Rachav, you remember from months ago when we actually read it, she definitely is called a prostitute. But, if you're reading this in shul, right, there could be a kid having a bar mitzvah. So the bar mitzvah kid wants to read about a prostitute. Imagine middle school age children dealing with that. So better to have an English translation that says an innkeeper. And you can get around it and say that in the English translation because the word for food, like the grace after meals, birkat ha-mazon, zonah. So if you want to, you can apply the translation to feeding. Now, you could say a lot then about why the same word for feeding is mazon, food, like the organization that I suggest people give money to when they sell their chametz for Passover. Mazon is also related to prostitute. What are we feeding that way? That's all I'll say about that. So anyway, that's why that's Hertz. So Rabbi Hertz kind of didn't make that up on his own. He got the Aramaic translation and said, okay, I'll call Rachav an innkeeper. I'll call this one an innkeeper. Okay. Excuse me. So now on the right-hand side, Gilead, there is nothing unusual in a child being given the name of the land in which he was born. So the Gileadite drove out. This action.
Jonah,
Yeah, go ahead.
just before we get too far, is there a difference between a concubine and a handmaiden who also implied
Yes,
they weren't
yes.
married?
Yeah. A handmaid has a job in the house. A concubine has a different job. Okay.
Oh, I'm thinking Jacob's, he had two wives and they had two handmaidens and he populated.
Yeah, but they were given to him to become a concubine.
Right.
So they rose in status from handmaid to concubine.
But they are called, that's what they're called. They're not called innkeepers.
Yeah, but they're not called prostitutes. Okay, so there is that status too. So there's nothing wrong with being a concubine in the Torah or the Bible, but there is something wrong in being a prostitute. So, and then to whitewash it and say innkeeper, really that's being dishonest to the text. Okay, drove out, verse 2. This action was illegal because by law, as Kimchi remarks, the son of a concubine had a share in the inheritance. If she was a concubine. If she was a prostitute, then no. Another woman, an opprobrious term for a concubine. Tov. Jewish commentators regard this as the name of the Lord of the land. What we find, right, so trying to figure out where this land of Tov is and what is it. So commentators are saying perhaps it's named for the person. The person's name was Tov. It isn't, so that's unusual. You don't really have that as a person's name. But, the name Tevye means God is good. Tovia or Tuvia would it be in Hebrew. Or Tobias. So all those, Tobias, Tevye, Tuvia, it's God is good. So you have that as a name. It's not a common name, but it is a name. So just the name Tov without God's name added at the end of it is not really a name that I've ever come across as a man's name. But commentators are suggesting that the land is named for a person. We find a person bearing the same name in Ruth chapter 3. The land adjoined Syria and is usually located northeast of Gilead. So it's, in other words, it's in the upper Golan Heights, what would be the Golan Heights of Israel today. It's mentioned again in 2 Samuel chapter 10, in alliance with the Ammonites in their war against David. It may be identical with Tubin in 1 Maccabees and Tuviani in 2 Maccabees. Okay. Were gathered. The text does not use the ordinary word asaf, but lakat, associated with gleaning. It probably conveys the idea of a slow recruitment, man by man. That word has been used before, though, in the book of Judges. So, so it's a slow gathering process. So who knows how long it took? Months, years to gather a group together, and who knows how big the group was, too. Vain, see on chapter 9:4, went out with him. They lived by carrying out raids. So that, so they're just a band of no goodniks and making a living by, who knows, stealing sheep, whatever, stuff like that. Okay, so let's see what Alter has to say on these first 3 sentences. On page 165. Gilead's wife bore him sons. The probable, though not inevitable, inference is that the legitimate sons were born after Yiftach, he belonging to his father's wild oats phase. You shall not inherit in our father's house. This declaration, accompanied by the banishment, appears to be a performative speech act with legal force. For you are the son of another woman. They don't dare call his mother a whore to his face, and so they use a euphemism. Their behavior toward him, however, is brutal. In this regard, see the next comment here. And Yiftach fled from his brothers. The fact that he has to flee suggests that their driving him out was implemented with a threat of doing him bodily harm. The land of Tov, this is a remote region in the northeastern sector of Gilead. No account men. Okay, so he translates it as no account. Our older English translation says vain. So no goodniks. The same term, rekim, literally empty, is also used for the mercenaries hired by Avimelech. Back in previous chapter. It probably refers to men without property on the margins of society who have nothing to lose and readily join a band of guerrillas or bandits. The young David also puts together a private militia of this sort when he flees from Saul. Okay.
Once
so,
again,
yes.
the text being a little clunky, it definitely says that this woman, this harlot or concubine or whatever, bore him many sons. So we're inferring that it's another.
No. It's another woman. Yes. So,
And Gilead's
okay,
wife
so
bore him sons, and when his
right,
wife's sons grew up, they drove him
no, but
out.
I'm reading that as some other woman.
Yeah,
I wasn't reading that the harlot becomes the wife. Okay, and
Okay.
also because those sons born to this woman say to Yiftach, you're son of some other woman, right? So it's 2 women there. So there's this prostitute, and we'll just call her a
Okay.
prostitute. Anything else is just comment on it to whitewash it. So there's a
Well,
prostitute. Yeah,
Alter calls her a whore woman.
yeah, right. So that's
Yeah.
why he's honest with the translation. He sees no reason to go according to the rabbinic commentaries and the medieval Jewish commentaries to whitewash it and say concubine, let alone say innkeeper. Okay, so it's two women that we know of that Gilad has relations with. From one comes Yiftach, from another comes
The rest.
a few. We don't know how many sons, but more than two. Okay, 4. We'll read 4 through 11. Vayehi miyamim, vayilachamu b'nei Ammon im Yisrael. So after some time, the people of Ammon fought with Israel. 5. Vayehi ka'asher nilchamu b'nei Ammon im Yisrael, vayelchu ziknei Gilad, lakachat et Yiftach me'eretz tov. So when they were fighting, that is, when the Ammonites were fighting with Israel, the elders of Gilad went and took Yiftach from the land of Tov. Why did they take him? Maybe he had a reputation of fighting with this band. Who knows? We'll see. 6. Vayomru leYiftach, lecha v'hayita lanu lekatzin v'nilchama bivnei Ammon. They said to Yiftach, go and be for us a captain or a chief and fight, and will fight against the Ammonites. So the elders of Gilad want to make Yiftach their chief to fight against the Ammonites. 7. Vayomer Yiftach leziknei Gilad, halo atem senetem oti, vatigarshuni mi beit avi, umadua batam elai ata, kasher tsar lachem. So Yiftach is honest and says to the elders of Gilead, don't you hate me? You drove me out from my father's house. And why are you coming to me now when you're in distress? Like, so now, in other words, now I'm good for you? You drove me out before. Why should I come to you now when you're in distress? 8. Vayomru ziknei Gilad el Yiftach, lachein ata shavnu elecha, v'halachta imanu, v'nilchamta bivnei Ammon, v'hayita lanu larosh, l'chol yoshvei Gilad. So they don't apologize, but they just say, the elders of Gilad say to Yiftach, therefore now we have returned to you. In other words, fill in the gap here. You're right. We had driven you out, but now we need you, and we're coming back to you. Okay? We have returned to you. You'll go with us and fight with us against the Ammonites, and you'll be our head for all of the inhabitants of Gilead.
Right. So Joe, wait,
Yes.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so the elders
Right. They're
it
not
drove
the
him
sa-
out, but I thought it was just his like the brothers or the sons of the other woman. So is it
That's
Right.
what I was going to say.
That's-
I
that's
don't
another-
think they were complicit.
You're right. So that's another problem with the text. It just shows the editing isn't good, but we have to fill in a gap then. Maybe the sons of Gilead actually, so Yiftach and his stepbrothers, their father Gilead, right? That's his, right? So his stepbrothers probably had the backing of the elders in driving Yiftach out of their father's house, right? So in other words, either Alter or this commentary said that it was a performative action, and so how do they have legal force if not with the backing of the elders?
right? Okay, that makes
So-
sense.
So I guess that's what we have to understand.
And time has gone by, so the brothers could now be the elders.
They could be. Right,
more
but
likely the elders were complicit.
you'd expect the text to then say the elders who were the sons of Gilead, or who were the brothers of Yiftach, but it doesn't say that. So I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see in the commentary too. But let's three more sentences. 9. Vayomer Yiftach el ziknei Gilad, im meshivim atem oti lehilachem bivnei Almon, v'natan Adonai otam lefanai, anochi eheyet lachem lerosh. So Yiftach says to the elders of Gilead, if you're bringing me back to fight against the Ammonites, and God gives them before me, I will be your head. So in other words, I'm not going to be your head now. You want me to be your head now, and then we'll fight. No, I'm offering, I'll come back and fight. You're bringing me back to fight. If I win, I'll be your head. Right? Okay, so he's just saying, he's adding stakes here to this, to the idea of being powerful and being the chief. So they're offering him to be the chief now. He says, no, let's see if I win. If I win, then I'll be chief. 10, Vayomru ziknei Gilad el Yiftach, Adonai yihye shomea benotenu, im lo ki devarcha kain naaseh. So the elders of Gilead said to Yiftach, God will be listening. That is, we're making God our witness among us, between us, if we don't do as you say. So in other words, we're agreeing to what you say, and we're calling God as witness to it. We're taking, in other words, we're taking an oath in God's name that we're agreeing to your condition. You go fight for, you lead us in battle, and then we'll make you chief. 11, Vayelech Yiftach im ziknei Gilad, vayasimu ha'am oto aleihem, lerosh ulakatzin, vayeraber Yiftach et kol devarav, lifnei Adonai b'mitzpah. Yiftach went with the elders of Gilead, and the people put him over them as head and captain or chief, and Yiftach spoke all his words before God at Mitzpah. Right? So Mitzpah, we've seen Mitzpah before, where previous judge spoke from. So it's an important point here in the book of Judges. It becomes a place for someone of importance to speak to God in front of the people. Okay, so let's look at the commentary in verses 4 through 11. Page 251, 4, this verse picks up the thread of the story in chapter 10. So from 10:17. That is, 10:17 is the people are crying out. The Ammonites were gathered for war. So now, here comes the war. That's what the commentary is suggesting, that we understand the chronology. After a while, literally from days, it was 18 years after the beginning of the oppression. See chapter 10:8. Made war, Ammonite oppression developed into a military campaign against Israel, which had to be resisted. The elders of Gilead, namely the heads of the families, including the father's house of Yiftach, hence his remark in verse 7. Right, so in other words, right, he's talking to them as if they're the ones who drove him out, right? Saying to the elders. But that's, again, getting to Marlene and Barry's point. Who are these people? Are they his brothers, or are they the elders? Or, yes, the brothers become the elders. Or maybe the brothers are acting with permission of the elders. So this is, right. 6, be our chief. They were not asking him to act as a hired leader only for the duration of the war. The term katzin is used in Joshua 10:24, where it signifies a military commander, though it's also applied to a civil ruler. 7, do not hate me. See Isaac's answer to Avimelech in Genesis 26. Yeah. Drive me out, Genesis 26. That's about, the digging of the wells. And then you fill in Isaac's wells, he digs more wells. Why do you hate me? That thing. Drive me out. The question was addressed to the delegation because they were indirectly responsible for his expulsion, which, as rulers of the city, they could have prevented. Also, because among them were members of his father's family who had perpetrated the deed.
So it's both.
It could be, according to Abarvanel, it's
Right.
both. We don't know, but that's one way. That's one way you could legitimately explain it. When you are in distress, he reproaches them, not so much for coming to him when they needed his aid, but for not coming to his help when he needed them. If you are not prepared to help me in my trouble, he says in effect, why do you expect me to help you in yours? Right. 8, therefore, because we have wronged you. 9, in other words, here the commentary adds the admission of guilt. Right, I said there in verse 8, what's missing is their apology, but it just says we're coming to you, which means parenthetically we agree with you, we're wrong, but that's not stated in the text. So Barvanel's just bringing it out. 252 on verse 9, I will be your head. That is, if I am victorious, I will inevitably be your head, whether you agree or not. Right, so then it won't just be, in other words, by having this strategy, it's not just an agreement between the elders of the city and Yiftach, but it'll be clear to all of Israel that he's worth it. And that the elders of Gilead then wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because the entire public will be behind Yiftach. That's the idea politically. Witness, that literally listening, what they implied was that God would be a witness to their agreement. 11, the people made him head. The choice was approved by all the people. See the election of Saul, Rechavam, and Jeroboam. All his words, this doubtless refers to the agreement he had come to with the elders. His purpose was to add religious sanction to the compact, hence before the Lord. Mitzpah in Gilead, where the people had assembled. Chapter 10. Okay, so let's see altar on this section. Page 166. The elders of Gilead went to take Yiftach from the land of Tov. They're going to seek him out in the Badlands, where he has located with his fighters, and that's just altar, just adding that. We don't know it's Badland, and in fact, it's the opposite of what's implied by calling it Eretz Tov, which would be good land, right? But the fact that he's in this place with this band of mercenaries or no-goodniks, so altar just says then it's the Badlands. Okay, just saying it's ironic that he's calling it the Badlands when it's Eretz, land of Tov. They're going to seek him out in the Badlands, where he is located with his fighters, obviously reflects the dire straits in which they find themselves. Come be our captain. Their initial speech to him is brusque, devoid of deference or diplomatic gesture. The position they offer him is military commander, Katzin. Did you not hate me and drive me out from my father's house? We now learn something new about the banishment. The brothers' harsh act either had the tacit endorsement of the elders or was actively abetted by them. Therefore, now we have come back to you. The therefore amounts to a concession on their part. Precisely because we were complicit in your banishment, we now come to you to make amends. Come back or bring back is a thematic keyword in this story. Chief. Now they up the political ante. He will not be merely a captain, but chief or head, Rosh, of the whole community. If you bring me back, the man who was driven out, now contemplates being brought back as the elders have come back to him. instead of accepting the immediate offer to be chief. He stipulates that he will assume that position only if he's victorious in battle, but he would have to become a captain in order to undertake the battle. It is I. The Hebrew puts the pronoun I, usually not needed, before the conjugated verb in a structure of emphasis. On 167, may the Lord be witness, literally, may the Lord listen. The people set him over them as chief and captain. In the event, both positions are conferred on him before the battle. Yiftach spoke all his words before the Lord. This is a prayer before the battle, or perhaps an inquiry of an oracle. Okay, so, but we don't have the prayer. So let's go on. 12.
Before you reread this
Yes, go
next
ahead.
section, I actually skipped ahead when you were reading the Hebrew, and it almost sounds like it could be describing modern Israel and its enemies. He becomes a leader, and the first thing he wants to do is he wants to make a peace treaty, and he's asking, why are you at war? And then there's an answer, and then he's explaining it, but nobody's buying it. I mean, it's
So let's see.
it's kind of an interesting part we're about to read.
Right. So the commentary suggests 12 to 28. So let's do that. So back to page 252 at the bottom. Vayishlach Yiftach malachim el melech b'nei Ammon lemor mali valach kivata elai lihilachem ba'artzi. So Yiftach sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites, saying, "What's the deal? Why did you come to me to do war in my land? What's up?" Vayomer melech b'nei Ammon el malachei Yiftach. Ki lakach Yisrael et artzi, ba'aloto mitzrayim, me'arnon ve'ad hayabok, ve'ad hayarden, ve'ata hashiva eten beshalom. So the king of the Ammonites say to the messengers of Yiftach, what's the deal? The deal is that Israel took my land when it came out of Egypt, when it rose out of Egypt. And that is now back to what is my land? From the Arnon to the Yabok until the Jordan. And now return the land peacefully. If you give back the land, then there's be no war. Okay? I want my land back. Even though God gave the land then, right, in the Torah, right? They defeated the king of the Ammonites in the book of Numbers, and God gave them that land and gave it to the tribes of Gad, Reuven, and half the tribe of Manasseh. So you can't really give it back. It's up to God to give it back. I'm just saying in the context of the Bible so far. 15. Vayomer lo, 14. Vayosef od Yiftach, vayishlach malachim melech b'nei Ammon. So the messengers went. What's up? The messengers come back, Ammonite king saying, you have our land. Give back our land. It'll be peace. Now, 14. So Yiftach again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites. 15. Vayomer lo, ko amar Yiftach, lo lakach Yisrael et Eretz Moav ve'et Eretz b'nei Ammon. He said to him, thus says Yiftach, Israel didn't take the land of Moab and the land of the Ammonites. Ki, 16, ki ba'alotam mimitzrayim, vayelech Yisrael bamidbar ad Yamsuf vayavo Kadesha. Because when they came out of Egypt, Israel went in the desert to the Reed Sea, and they came to Kadesh. 17. Vayishlach Yisrael malachim el melech Edom lemor, e'ebrana be'artzecha, velo shama melech Edom, v'gam el melech Moav shalach, velo ava, vayeshev Yisrael b'Kadesh. So, at the time, reminding us, which is why this is the Haftarah for the portion of Chukat, because that's where these events happened. Israel sent messengers to the Edomite king saying, let us cross through your land, please. And the Edomite king did not let them. And also to the king of Moab, they sent messengers saying the same thing. Let's cross your land, please. And he didn't let them. And Israel stayed in Kadesh. 18, Vayelech Bamidbar, Vayasav et Eretz Edom, ve'et Eretz Moav, Vayavo mimizrach Shemesh le'Eretz Moav, Vayachanun be'ever Arnon, ve'lo va'u bigvul Moav, ki Arnon gvul Moav. So then they went in the desert, and they went in a roundabout way around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and they came eastward by the east side to the land of Moab, and they camped on the other side of the Arnon, like on the other side of the border. They didn't go into the territory, and they didn't enter the territory of Moab because the Arnon was the boundary, the border with Moab. 19, Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim El Sichon, Melech HaEmori, Melech Cheshbon. Vayomer lo Yisrael, Na'abrana ba'artzecha ad mekomi. So Israel sent messengers to Sichon, the king of the Amorites, king of Cheshbon, king of Cheshbon, and Israel said to him, let us cross, please, in your land unto my place. In other words, I want to cross through to get to the land of Israel. 20. V'lo ha'emin Sichon et Yisrael avor bigvulo. Vaye'asof Sichon et kol amo, vayachanu biyatza, vayilachem im Yisrael. And Sichon didn't believe Israel, that they would just cross. Sichon did not believe Israel, that they would just cross his territory. So Sichon gathered all his people, and they camped at Yahaz, or Yahaz, and they fought with Israel. 21. Vayitain Adonai Elohei Yisrael et Sichon ve'et kol amo biyad Yisrael vayakum vayirash Yisrael et kol eretz ha'emori yoshev ha'aretz hahi. And God, the God of Israel, gave Sichon and his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them, and Israel possessed all of the land of the Amorites and the inhabitants of that country. 22, Vayirshu et kol gevul ha'emori me Arnon ve'ad hayabok umin hamidbar ve'ad hayarden. And they possessed the whole territory of the Amorites. Understand now that we're talking to the Ammonites. These are the Amorites. So they possessed the country of the Amorites from the Arnon to the Abok, from the desert to the Jordan. Ve'ata, 23, Adonai Elohei Yisrael horish et ha'emori mipnei amo Yisrael. Ve'ata tirashenu. And now God, the God of Israel, has dispossessed the Amorites from before Israel, and should you possess them? So in other words, the Amorites are gone. Now the Ammonites are there. Yiftach is saying, who are you to take the land that we got through war and that God gave us? 24, Halo et asher yorishcha kemosh Elohecha ototi rash ve'kol asher horish Adonai Eloheinu mipanenu otoni rash. Shouldn't it be that whatever Kamosh, your God, gives you to possess, you should possess? And everything that God gave, God, our God, gives us to possess, we should possess. Right? You take your land according to your God, Kamosh. We take our land according to our God, God. 25. Va'ata, hatov tov ata, Mi Balak ben Sipor melech Moav, harov rav im Yisrael im nilchom nilchambam. And now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Tzipor, king of Moab? Did he strive with Israel? Did he ever fight against them? Right, he's the one who brought Balaam to curse. and never fought. 26. B'shevet Yisrael becheshbon uviv noteha uve'ar or uviv noteha uvechol ha'arim asher al yedei Arnon 300 shana umadua lo hitzaltem ba'etahi. So now Israel has been living in Heshbon and its towns, and in Ar and its towns, and all the cities that are by the Arnon for 300 years. That's interesting. Now we have a sense of time where Yiftach is in relationship to when the events of the book of Numbers occurred. So it's been 300 years from essentially the time of Joshua until this point. Not so sure that that's accurate. But I don't know. We'll see in the commentary about it. We'll see what Alter has to say about the 300 years. And so we've been here 300 years. Well, how come you're now it's an issue? Right. Why are you bringing up the issue now? 27. Va'anochi lo chatati lach va'ata oseh iti ra'a lihilachem bi yishpot Adonai hashofet hayom bein bnei Yisrael uvein bnei Ammon. And I haven't sinned before you. I didn't do anything wrong to prompt you to fight me, and you're doing bad against me, to fight against me. God should judge. He should be the judge today between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. 28. Velo shama melech b'nei Ammon el divrei Yiftach asher shalach elav. And the king of the Ammonites did not listen to the words of Yiftach that was sent to him. Okay, so you provide this background. I'm not listening to you. I'm still going to go to war against you. So let's read the commentary here.
Does that whole story not sound like it could have been written like a year ago, 6 months ago? I mean, it's
Oh, well, giving like who was here first and
well,
what
who was here
story
first
is.
and how it happened and who started wars and who made agreements and who tried to sue for peace.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's an age-old, like Israel has to justify itself. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the commentary beginning with verse 12, back on 252. Yiftach sent messengers. He at once acts as the official leader of the nation. What hast thou to do with me? Literally, what to me and thee? That is, what do you want of me? 253:13, the Arnon. This river flows into the Dead Sea halfway down on the eastern shore. It marked this southern boundary of the disputed territory. The Yabok, called by the Arabs Zerka, Blue River, it empties itself into the Jordan near the city of Adam. This marked the northern boundary of the land to which the Ammonites laid claim. Restore those cities. The land was Ammonite, belonging at the time of the Israelite conquest to the Amorites. The claim was apparently based on the fact that Sichon, the Amorite king, has wrested the territory from Moab. The Ammonites had now merged with the Moabites. See Chemosh thy God in verse 24, the chief god of Moab, and so demanded the restoration of the cities which had belonged to Moab. Now, we should just understand a little bit. Ammon and Moab, according to Genesis, are the children of the incestuous relationship that Lot had with his daughters. Right? They escaped the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, ended up in a cave. These two daughters said to each other, let's get our father drunk. Nobody's here anymore. And there are no people around. We want to have, we need a future. Let's get our father drunk. He'll lay with us. And so they both become pregnant. One becomes Moab. The other becomes Ammon. Okay, so that's just the background here that the Torah gives to who these people are. Are they, so that their ancestors, the founders of Moab and Ammon are the child of an incestuous relationship. And also in rabbinic law, Israelites are not supposed to marry Moabites or Ammonites. But then the next question should be, but how is it that Ruth is allowed to marry Boaz? Okay, so the law is a male Israelite is not allowed to marry a female Moabite or a female Ammonite, but a male, no, that's not true. I'm wrong. A female Israelite is not allowed to marry a male Moabite or a male Ammonite, but a male Israelite is allowed to marry a woman, a female Moabite, female Israelite, because you see, the man then takes possession of the woman, and the woman becomes part of the man's household and the man's tribe. So if an Israelite woman marries a Moabite or an Ammonite, then that Israelite is lost.
Is that rabbinic?
Yes, that's rabbinic. That's the way to explain
Right.
how Ruth is allowed to be in the Bible and how King David could be king, because he's the great grandson of that relationship. Okay, so just the background about who Moab and Ammon are.
Right, but doesn't that make it difficult? So, but later on, the rabbis say, okay, but the mother determines the Jewishness of the child, right? Isn't that
Right.
how we go by today? So
That's right, but that's several hundred
Complicated.
years after. That's the time of Ezra, where they changed that. So yeah, right. It's just so it just gets to the idea that we never read the Bible literally all the time. The Bible is understood because we are rabbinic Jews. We understand the Bible to be at the mercy of rabbinic interpretation. So the Bible is what the rabbis say it is. The Bible isn't what the Bible is. Okay, so that's very important as a foundational principle of what it means to be Jewish. We read the Bible through the lens of the rabbis. We cannot read the Bible alone. Okay.
The only problem with that is there are different rabbis in different sects who have different opinions, and I mean, like the laws of Passover. If you're a Sephardic and you're listening to Sephardic
But
rabbis,
that's just a minor detail, whether you can eat rice or beans.
well,
It doesn't get to the bigger question of the
Yeah.
fact that you're not supposed to have chametz in your house
Right.
for 8 days of Passover. So right. So yeah, you're getting into
which
the
is 7
weeds.
days in the Torah, right?
Yeah. But you were getting into the weeds, but it's just in other words, everybody agrees that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is not read literally. Everybody agrees you don't give your rebellious child over to be executed, right? And things like that. And everybody agrees that a male Israelite can marry a female Moabite and Ammonite because the rabbis say so. Okay. 253, the bottom left, those cities, literally them, peaceably without resort to war. Took not away, God had strictly forbidden them to do so. The land of Moab, the introduction into the discussion of the apparently irrelevant Moab is explained by Kimchi as emphasizing the fact that the king of Ammon was claiming Moabite territory, which had been conquered by the Amorites before passing into Israel's possession. Therefore, Israel had not taken anything even from Moab, much less from Ammon. Kadesh, according to Ibn Ezra, Numbers 20:14, this is not Kadesh Barnea. There's two different towns that are in the Torah there. The king of Edom, see Numbers 14, evidently the early history of Israel was carefully handed down from generation to generation. Okay, the king of Moab, 254, this is not explicitly recorded, but see the next note. He would not. This is inferred from the words of Moses in Deuteronomy 2. As the children of Esau that dwell in Seir and the Moabites that dwell in Ar did unto me. As Edom did not allow the Israelites to pass through, so also Moab. Israel abode in Kadesh, see Numbers 20. He walked through the wilderness. The Israelites made a circuit around Edom and Moab, going south along the western frontier of Edom to the Red Sea, and then through the desert northward to the east of Edom and Moab. The other side, that is, at the extreme northern end of Moab, where the territory of Sichon and Og began. Heshbon, the modern Hesbon, about 16 miles east of the Jordan. My place, that is, the land they were making for, Canaan. Yahaz, see on Joshua 13. 255, the delimitation of boundaries in this verse leaves no room for the Ammonites except perhaps in the desert. Shouldest thou possess them? Would the Ammonites presume to undo the work of God? Chemosh. Commentators recognize the anomaly of introducing the national god of Moab into the present context. Kimchi points out the biting sarcasm of Yiftach's words. You're demanding land which belonged to Moab, whose God was unable to save it from falling into the hands of the Amorites. Take then possession of the land which Chemosh does give to you. Better, superior in military power. Balak, see Numbers 21. Did he ever fight against them? Balak did not venture to meet Israel in battle, but instead called in the aid of a soothsayer who failed him. Would then the king of Ammon, with the weaker forces at his disposal, dare to attempt what Balak was afraid to do? Aroer, the modern Arair on the bank of the Arnon, the southernmost city of Israel east of the Jordan. The text has the variant Aror. 256, 300 years, from the conquest by Joshua to the time of Yiftach. The computation in years is as follows. Joshua 28, Othniel 40, Ehud 80, Deborah 40, 7 years of the Midianite oppression, Gideon 40, Avimelech 3, Tolah 23, Yair 22, 18 under Ammon, making a total of 300. Kimchi gives a slightly different calculation. I, Yiftach, speaking on behalf of Israel. Okay, and let's read altar on this section, and then we're going to have to stop here for today. Okay, so we're on 167. And Yiftach sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites. The scholarly consensus is that this entire passage of attempted diplomatic negotiation has been spliced in from another source. According to the account in Numbers 20 and 33, it is Moab, not Ammon, that refuses right of transit to Israel. And in fact, Moab is mentioned first here in verse 15, and more often together with Edom and the Amorites. The land of the Ammonites may well be an editorial addition intended to link this passage with the surrounding narrative. Chemosh, the deity mentioned in verse 24, is the national god of the Moabites, whereas the Ammonite god would be Milcom. Do not take possession of what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess. The theological assumption of this statement is perfectly characteristic of this early period of Israelite history. Israel has its own God, Yahweh, believed to be more powerful than other gods, but each nation has its guiding deity, assumed to look after the national destiny. Did he strive with Israel? Did he do battle with them? In fact, he fought against Israel, as is reported in Numbers 22, but to no avail, for Yahweh caused him to be defeated. Okay, we will continue the story of Yiftach next time in September. I'll see you all before then in other contexts, but have a good rest of the day. Shabbat shalom, and hopefully you'll have.
Shalom.
You always
Jonah.
like to leave us on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, Deborah.
Is the Wednesday class also till?
We have one more Wednesday class. It's just I'm away next Friday, so I won't be able to teach next Friday.
Right. Oh, okay.
And we
So
have-
next Wednesday.
We have Monday and Wednesday next week,
Okay.
God willing. There's no funeral.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.